Alright, today we're going to look at some really basic divisibility rules. Now, these are going to be the most common divisibility rules in Part A. And in Part B, we're going to be looking at some different divisibility rules that you might not be as familiar with, but can prove to be extraordinarily helpful. In particular, it comes in handy in fractions, especially when you have to reduce your fractions. So anyway, let's take a look. So, just like in multiplication, we know that anything multiplied by 1 is going to be the number. Well, the same rule applies in division. So any number divided by 1 is going to be itself. So it can divide by any number. So for example, if you have 14 divided by 1, the answer is going to be 14. Any number divided by 1 is going to be itself. Now the rule of 2 is a pretty easy one because 2 will divide evenly into any even number. Okay, so if you have any even number, alright, so we have 32 divided by 2 equals 16. So as long as this last number is an even number, being 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, then that number will divide evenly by 2. Very simple. Take a look at the rule of 5. So 5 will divide evenly into any number ending, ending in 0 or 5. As long as the number ends in a 0 or a 5, then we will divide evenly by 5. So for example, 15, 20, 365. As long as it ends in a 5 or a 0, it will divide evenly by 5. The last one is 10. And 10 is even more restricted because it has to have any number ending in 0. It has to have a number that ends in 0. Okay. Now, there is one exclusion there, and that is the number 0. Remember, 0, you cannot divide by 0. Because it's impossible to divide 0 groups. Three has a very unique way of, a very unique rule to itself. This is almost kind of a trick. We have 3. You'll know that a number divides evenly by 3 if the sum of the digits are divisible by 3. Well, some people are thinking, well, what does that mean? Well, let's take a simple number here. Let's take a number like 123. Well, what we're going to do is, at first glance, we look at it and say, well, I don't know, is that number divisible by 3 or not? It's a good question. It may or may not be. Well, the quick way to find out is by simply adding a little plus sign in here, adding up the total digits. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, and 6, we know 6 will divide evenly by 3, so therefore we know that 123 will divide by 3. Alright, well let's check and see if we're right. 3 into 123. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 4 times 3 is 12. Come down to 3. 3 goes into 3 once. And as you can see, 3 goes into 123 41 times. Now, it doesn't matter how many digits you have, you add them all up. If the sum of those digits isn't divisible by 3 evenly, then you know that the original number is divisible by 3 evenly. All right, let's take a look at the rule of 4. 4's got a strange one as well. The rule of 4 simply states if the last 2 digits divide evenly by 4, then the number will too. Okay? There's a good reason for that. And the reason is because 4 will go into 100 perfectly even. Because we know, as we know, that will go in 25 times. And so because it will go into 100 even, any multiple of 100 it will go into. So we know that it will go into 200 even, it'll go into 300 even, it'll go into 400 even. And so because we know that it'll go into all these numbers evenly, all we have to do is look at the last 2 digits to determine if that number will in fact divide by 4. So let's take a look at an example here. Okay, so we're looking at the rule of 4. What we got here is to get a series of 4 different numbers here. We want to determine if in fact these 4 numbers, any of these 4 numbers will divide evenly by 4. In our first example here, we've got 124. Well, all we have to do in this case is to simply look at the last 2 digits. Well, we can see that the last 2 digits are 24. And since we know that 24 divided by 4 equals 6, and that divides evenly, we know that 124 will divide evenly. In fact, when we take this and we know that 100 divides by 4 25 times, we can simply say that 6 plus 25, we know that it will divide evenly 31 times. Let's take a look at our next number here, 360. Well, if we take a look here, we all know we can ignore the 3, we just have to look at the last 2 digits, and it's 60. Since we know 4 goes into 60 15 times, we know that it will go into 360. Well, 521. We look at the last 2 digits. You know what? 21 does not divide by 4 equally. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this number here does not divide evenly by 4. Now we've got a 4-digit number here, but this is 1,632. But the reality of it is that this is really just saying 1,600 instead of 600. It's 1,600s and 32. And since we know that 4 will go into 100 evenly, even if there's 1,600s of them, that you know that it'll go into that evenly, all we have to focus on, again, is the last 2 digits. In this case, 32. And since we know that 32 will divide evenly by 4 8 times, we know that 1,632 will also divide evenly by 4. All right, last rule we're going to cover for today is going to be the rule of 6. The rule of 6 is actually quite simple because it doesn't even rely on its own rule. The only rules it actually relies on are the rules of 2 and 3. And since we know the rule of 2 is any even number, and we know the rule of 3 is this by the sum of the digits, any number that will divide evenly by 2 and by 3 will automatically divide by 6. So let's take a look at an example here. So if we had, for example, the number 36. Well, we automatically know that it's an even number, so we know that, yes, it will divide by 2. We also know that 3 plus 6 equals 9, and we know that 9 divided by 3 is 3, so that divides evenly. So we know it divides evenly by 3, therefore we automatically know that it divides by 6. So this is a fairly simple method to determine it. And if we were to look at a larger number, for example, if we were to look at, say, take a look at number 342. First glance, that seems like a big number to just be able to say, hey, boom, we know 6 already. But we already know that it'll go by 2. 2 is a yes because it's an even number. And when we add up our numbers, we have 7 plus 2, which equals 9. And therefore, we know 3 will divide evenly. And since 2 and 3 will divide evenly, we can say 6 is a yes. Well, let's just check it out and see if we're right. We're going to go 6 into 342. Erase up here a little bit so we can see. Okay, 6 into 34 goes 5 times. 5 times 6 is 30. 4, bring down the 2. 6 goes into 42 7 times. 7 times 6 is 42. And we know that 6 goes into 342 57 times.